But we are starting off with the results of the local elections yesterday that now changes the makeup of the state legislature. So Democrats, held that slim majority in the House, 56 to 54, but two House members just won their mayoral races in their cities. So how is this all going to work? How does this change the agenda? Let's bring in Lauren Gibbons. She's a Capitol reporter for Bridge, Michigan. Hey, Lauren, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me today.
All right, so we knew this wasn't really a big surprise that Lori Stone and Kevin Coleman could possibly win their mayor's positions in their hometown. But explain for us what this means to now the balance of power in the House and a possible special election.
Yeah, this is definitely something that House Democrats, I think, were preparing for. Obviously, they were aware that these two representatives were running for mayoral office in their hometowns, but this puts the House very soon at a 54-54 tie. Now, that logistically means that the Democratic majority is now a tie, although Speaker Joe Tate will still maintain control of the legislative agenda, but it does mean that they'll need a couple of Republican votes once Representatives Stone and Coleman leave office to pass major policy initiatives, which, as we've seen over the last several months, they've mostly relied on their own caucus as opposed to going across the aisle. So it will significantly complicate things, even if a special election is called right this minute. It will still take a couple of months to fill those seats. They are safely Democratic, so it's kind of assumed at this point that a Democrat would fill those two spots, but it's going to take a while, and it's sort of moving up the pressure on Democrats to kind of get their main policy priorities done in the next couple of days.
All right, so before we get to that pressure to get the agenda done, let's talk about, do they have to fill those seats? Because if it takes a couple of months to even get a special election, you're already in the cycle pretty much for re-election in 24.
I think there's a pretty big impetus for Democrats to fill those seats quickly. Like I mentioned, 56-54, while still a slim majority, is still better than a 54-54 tie for House Democrats. And, there's also the issue of representation, even if it is for a short period of time next year before the 2024 elections. The people in those districts wouldn't have a representative if they didn't call a special election.
All right, Lauren, tell us what's on the agenda now. We know that the House and the Senate have to get through some kind of transparency rules by the end of the year because of Prop 1. And we also see it feels like things have been accelerated, that they want to finish up quickly. Can you tell us where things stand now, what you're watching?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing, as you mentioned, is a transparency piece. Lawmakers are constitutionally obligated to get financial disclosure rules in place before the end of the year this year. That could be, that could be a little bit more contentious than perhaps some anticipated. Some people want the legislation to go further than what the Senate passed recently. So there's still some odds and ends to be worked out there, and that's the main thing that they have to get done. We're also seeing a lot of movement on energy legislation, solar siting bills that would essentially shift who has the final say on where renewable energy locations are placed, essentially. And it's so those are probably the two big things. There's a few other issues hanging out there, and as I mentioned, a lot of things could come up as Democrats kind of debate what they're going to do as they look at a future few months where they don't have a full majority in the House and Senate.
So when is session going to end for the year? Do you have an idea?
So it's widely speculated that it's going to end potentially as soon as this week. It's in part because of this new setup based on these local elections, looking at a 54-54 tie. But also there is some legislation regarding the presidential primary that because it did not get immediate effect in the state Senate. It doesn't go into effect until a certain time after the legislature adjourns. So lawmakers are also looking at that to try and get that legislation in place by the time of the scheduled presidential primary in late February. So there's a couple of reasons Democrats have been looking at adjourning early, but knowing that they do not have the majority after these two representatives take mayoral office has really accelerated that timeline. We don't exactly know, but that's what we've been hearing.
All right, and we know you'll be covering it all, and you can read Lauren's reporting at Bridge, Michigan. Lauren Gibbons, thanks so much for joining me. It's good to see you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
All righty. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the national election results. And really, that abortion rights is driving a lot of voter decisions here. So we're going to take you Ohio. Abortion rights are now enshrined in the state constitution there. Kentucky's Democrat governor held on to his job after making abortion rights a key message in his campaign. When we look at Virginia, what happened there last night, the state house flipped to Democrat after the Republican governor put a 15-week abortion ban at the center of his campaign. You're seeing this trend here around the country. How this is going to play out in 24 with Republicans having to answer for their stance on abortion, we will just have to watch that. And speaking of Republicans, the third Republican presidential candidate debate is happening tonight in Miami as we go ahead and take a live look there.